Imagine yourself sitting down for a normal, everyday meal. Just a single spoonful of lard, sizzled with shallots, sends a rich, mouth-watering aroma wafting through the air. The moment you hear that sizzle, your stomach instantly starts rumbling. But if you travel over to Italy or Greece, they do things quite differently. They can happily enjoy a meal with just a slice of bread, a drizzle of olive oil, and a pinch of salt. No frying, no stir-frying, and absolutely no heavy grease. When you look closely into this seemingly tiny difference, you realize that behind it lies much more than just food choices. It is a thousands-year-old story about land, climate, war, and how humans adapt to the world around them. So, why does the West lean toward olive oil, while the East loves its lard? Let's start with the olive. Honestly, an olive tree is a pretty ordinary-looking fruit tree. There is nothing grand about it. Growing up reading Western books and stories that mentioned olive trees, I used to think they were spectacular. In reality, they are short, with twisted trunks, small, silvery green leaves, and a somewhat dry appearance, unlike the lush, vibrant green trees in our tropical country. But don't let looks fool you, because this is one of the hardiest trees on the planet. They can live for hundreds of years, and some even surpass 1,000 years. The older the tree gets, the better the quality of its fruit. Olives start out green and turn a deep purple or black as they ripen. Eating them straight from the tree isn't easy because they are incredibly bitter and astringent. However, once processed or pressed for oil, they turn into something incredibly valuable. It is this tiny fruit that shaped the entire culinary culture of the West. The process of making olive oil goes like this. First, the olives have to be harvested. Then, the entire fruit, including the skin and the pit, is crushed. Once crushed, it turns into a thick, paste-like mash. This mixture is then pressed to extract the liquid. The interesting part is that this liquid isn't just oil, it's a mix of water and oil. Since oil is lighter than water, if you let it sit for a while, the oil will naturally float to the top. All people have to do is separate that top layer of oil, and it's ready to use. In the old days, everything was done by hand, from A to Z, using heavy stones to crush and press the fruit. Today, we have modern machinery, but the core principle remains exactly the same. Crush, press, and separate. The highest grade is extra virgin olive oil, which comes from the very first press. It doesn't undergo any chemical processing, so it retains its natural aroma, a slightly bitter kick, and is packed with nutrients. The scale of olive oil usage in the West might come as a shock to us because we aren't used to it. To put it accurately, not many people back home use olive oil regularly. In Mediterranean countries like Greece, Italy, or Spain, an average person can consume 10 to 20 liters of olive oil per year, and in some places, it's even over 20 liters. That means they go through a bottle every few weeks, using it for everything from salads and bread to everyday cooking. Meanwhile, the global average sits at less than 1 liter per person per year. Simply put, people in the Mediterranean don't just use olive oil to cook, they practically live on it. When it comes to longevity records, while a normal tree can live a few centuries, many ancient olive trees in Europe, like those on the island of Crete, are estimated to be between 2,000 and over 3,000 years old. What's truly amazing is that they still bear fruit consistently. This means some of the olive oil being pressed today comes from trees that were alive in ancient times, back when civilizations like Greece and Rome were at their peak. It looks like a regular tree and a regular oil, but inside, it holds a story spanning thousands of years. Why do Westerners love olive oil so much? For them, especially in the Mediterranean, olive oil isn't just a cooking ingredient. It's the absolute soul of their cuisine. They use it on everything. They toss it in salads, stir it into pasta, marinate meat, or simply use it as a dip for bread. Some meals are incredibly basic, just bread, olive oil, and a bit of salt, and that's a whole meal. It's very humble, but to them, it's perfect, and hits the right spot. Beyond food, ancient people used olive oil to light lamps, make cosmetics, and even perform religious rituals. It was viewed as liquid gold, and was a vital trade commodity for the ancient Roman Empire. The West uses so much olive oil simply because the trees grow natively there. In the Mediterranean, the cradle of classic Western cuisine, the weather isn't always gentle. Summers are brutally hot and dry, with almost zero rain. the soil is rocky and barren, and fresh water is scarce. Yet, this harsh, stubborn land gave rise to an equally stubborn tree, the olive. Meanwhile, if we look over at Asia, particularly Southeast Asia, there is abundant rainfall, crisscrossing rivers, and fertile, nutrient-rich alluvial soil. This is a paradise for wet rice cultivation. And once you have rice, a very natural chain reaction follows. Rice gives you bran and leftover husks, which makes raising pigs incredibly convenient. Just like that, two different worlds form two distinct ecosystems from the very beginning. On one side, you have olive trees growing out of dry, rocky soil. On the other side, you have vibrant green rice paddies with a pigsty right in the backyard. Because of this, the story of what goes into a meal, the choice between olive oil and lard, was actually decided thousands of years ago. It wasn't about personal preference or what someone felt like buying at a supermarket to fry up a dish. The West grew trees to press oil, while our ancestors raised pigs to harvest lard since the dawn of time. For Asians, a pig was like a walking storage vault. It ate rice bran, leftover vegetables, and pretty much anything, and in return, it provided humans with meat, fat, skin, and organs. Almost nothing went to waste, except the hair and manure. During those times, lard was incredibly vital, because bottled cooking oil didn't exist yet. If you wanted fat for cooking, you either got it from animal fat, or you went without. Among all livestock, pigs were the easiest to raise, reproduced quickly, and fit perfectly into a household farming model. Once you rendered the lard, it kept for a long time, allowing families to use it gradually. When cooking, just a single spoonful was enough to make the whole pan fragrant. Whether you were frying shallots, stir-frying veggies, or searing fish, it made everything taste savory and rich. Crucially, lard handles high heat remarkably well, making it perfect for the fast, high-heat cooking style typical of Asia. Consequently, since the old days, whichever household had a lot of lard was considered well off. Having lard meant having delicious food, and there was even a time when lard was used as a measure of wealth. In China, lard isn't just an ingredient. It is a part of daily life. It is deeply tied to memories, family dinners, and culture. Once you grow up with that taste, the rich savoriness of lard becomes the gold standard of flavor. Even today, many people are turning back to lard instead of using vegetable oils. In ancient Western civilizations, like Greece or Rome, the story took a completely different path. They didn't have the right conditions to raise pigs on the same scale as Asia. Land wasn't overly abundant, animal feed was scarce, and the climate was dry, which severely limited large-scale livestock farming. However, they possessed something Asia didn't have much of: olive oil. By working with the fruit, they discovered something monumental: they could press it for oil. At first, olive oil wasn't a luxury item. It was simply a solution, a substitute for scarce animal fats. But over time, people began to appreciate its unique flavor profile. It wasn't just good, it was aromatic, carried a pleasant hint of bitterness, and had real depth. Eventually, olive oil found its way into every dish. From bread and salads to meat and fish, it became the foundation of Western cuisine. Without it, people felt a dish lost its soul. Just like lard in Asia, olive oil in the West stopped being an option and became the default. The West didn't just love olive oil, they spread it far and wide. As the Roman Empire expanded its borders, they brought along not just armies, but also their dietary habits, including olive oil. The oil was shipped in massive clay vessels across the Mediterranean, reaching Spain, Italy, Greece, and all the way to North Africa. It became one of the most critical trade goods of that era. Roman soldiers were even given olive oil as part of their daily rations. It was just like rice to Asians. Without it, life was tough. Century after century, olive oil wove itself deeply into their culture, turning from a simple cooking fat into a core part of their identity. Meanwhile, in Asia, civilizations built around wet rice cultivation continued to maintain their own systems. The two worlds ran parallel, each sticking to its own style, with very little crossover. Another factor that shaped the habit of using olive oil versus lard comes down to cooking techniques. In Asia, using lard goes hand in hand with quick, high-heat cooking, stir-frying and flash-frying over roaring fires. This cooks food rapidly, locking in crispness and freshness. On the flip side, Western cuisine, particularly in the Mediterranean, leans towards slow cooking, tossing, or roasting. Olive oil can't always handle extremely high temperatures, but it shines beautifully when drizzled over salads, used in marinades, or incorporated into gentle simmering. This gave rise to two distinct culinary philosophies. One focuses on fast stir-fries, eaten piping hot, while the other centers on slow cooking and savoring meals leisurely. Lately, people have become much more health conscious. In the past, nobody gave much thought to cholesterol or heart health. If there was food on the table, that was a blessing, let alone worrying about whether it was harmful. But as modern science began looking closely at our diets, olive oil suddenly shot up as a highly popular choice. Studies on the Mediterranean diet show that people who use olive oil regularly tend to have lower rates of cardiovascular disease, longer life expectancies, and better overall health stability. Meanwhile, consuming excessive amounts of animal fat has been linked to heart issues. Notice the word used here is linked, not that it's the direct, definitive cause. As a result, what started as a humble local ingredient has suddenly gone completely global. If you found this journey interesting, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you can. For now, it's time to say goodbye.